Good evening and welcome. We are live from Pretoria in Gauteng province. This is my NSFAS radio program that is brought to you by the National Student Financial Aid Scheme in collaboration with Government Communications, GCIS. My name is Karisho Mamambulo. I'm your host tonight and I'll be with you throughout the program. And I invite you to let us have a discussion about the National Student Financial Aid Scheme in relation to the 2018 application for financial aid. This program is live to at least 40 community radio stations throughout South Africa, and you can take part in our program by either calling us, where we will be opening the lines later in the program. That number is 0800 142 446. The line to call is 0800 142 446, or you can join our social media platforms. For Facebook, simply search the name in full, National Student Financial Aid Scheme, or you can follow us on Twitter. Our handle is myNSFAS. You can also follow us on our website, where you can get the latest information and news relating to the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Later in the program, we will hear about the online and manual application process. What are the key features in this application process and what to look for?
My experience of this new form is that it is much easier as it gives useful information for me, and I could fully understand it.
And of course, more on that in just about 10 minutes from now. But first, we had the news about the big launch of August the 1st, where the National Student Financial Aid Scheme announced its partnership with the National Youth Development Agency to help young people in rural areas to access NSFAS application forms for 2018 in order to get financial assistance from the state-owned scheme, which is NSFAS. The announcement said NYDA will make its branches and local offices available. Now, the question here is, how will this work and how accessible will these centers be to the young people in the rural areas? Katu Ramukumba is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Youth Development Agency, and he was also at the launch that was held outside Johannesburg in Ratanga on August the 1st. Eric le dumedisheng ke lamogeleng ke lenaneo la rena re le gašwa thui go tšwa mo Pretoria GCIS offices. You are welcome to call us in later in the program. We'll open the lines. But tonight we are discussing the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. It is about the 2018 applications that have opened on the 1st of August. And we're now in the studio having the National Student Financial Aid Scheme representatives, as well as the NYDA representatives who are available on the line to help us understand how the process is going to work. We go back on the line to the Chief Executive Officer of the National Youth Development Agency, Mr. Ramukumba. Good evening, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening to you and good evening to your listeners.
Before you tell us about this partnership you have entered into with the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, can you please make us understand what the NYDA is about and later the link to your role with NSFAS?
The NYDA, the entity of government established under Act number 54 of 2008, which is the National Youth Development Agency Act. It was established as a replacement of the two actual institutions, being the former National Youth Commission as well as the Youth Fund. Listeners would remember that the Youth Commission had the responsibility of lobbying and advocating for youth development across all sectors of society, while the Youth Fund was primarily responsible for the integration of young people in the mainstream economy of our country through skill development and youth-owned enterprises.
Mr. Ramukumba, I beg your pardon. It seems like we are experiencing a technical problem in terms of the sound. It is quite not clear. I'm not sure. Maybe it could be your positioning. Can you try to move around? And of course, as you continue to explain.
Okay. Hopefully you can hear me better now. As I was saying, the NYDA therefore then becomes responsible for the collapsed and combined mandate of the two institutions I've made reference to. But over and above that, it's also expected to lead an integrated youth development approach in South Africa, which means that it must mainstream youth issues into society. It must facilitate the implementation of youth development across all sectors of society, whilst as an agency we are also expected to implement certain programs and projects that directly speaks to youth development in our country. So given the broadness of the development issues that are required in developing young South Africans, as an agency we have taken a decision to focus mainly on skills development and entrepreneurship, as we think that these two areas will contribute immensely in making sure that young people are, one, prepared to be able to be absorbed by the economy, whether as job seekers or as the owners of the economy or as entrepreneurs. And we think that if we can succeed in these two issues, we will be able to ensure that we deal decisively with the question of unemployment and poverty, of which young people find themselves in the courses.
More than 40 learners from Ratanga, which is outside Johannesburg, participated at the launch of the NSFAS 2018 application window. The learners were from local schools who came in and completed the manual application forms and attached supporting documents to apply for funding. The same thing was happening throughout other NYDA offices nationwide. Our reporter, Mandy Abrahams, went out and spoke to some of the students and learners who came through.
Hi, this is Mandy from NSFAS, and we are in Khayelitsha testing the 2018 application form. We've got Sikelelwa here, who's recently graduated, and she's going to tell us about high school and her application form experience.
Hello Mandy, my name is Sikelelwa Mafu, and I studied at Marion RC High School in 2016. I graduated. I applied for NSFAS in 2016, and my experience of the previous form is that the form was too long, as it kept on asking similar questions all the time. It was a bit confusing. Unfortunately, my application was not successful, which is why I'm applying again. My experience of this new form is that it is much easier, as it gives useful information for me, and I could fully understand it. And it only took me 5 minutes to fill it in.
That was a learner who was at Khayelitsha, who was trying the new application form that was introduced by NSFAS. In the studio, we are now joined by Victor Rambau. I want us now to focus our discussion to the new form, the application process, and what to do and not to do when applying for NSFAS, and what are the key important things that you should know about when applying. Mr. Rambau, thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening to listeners.
Mr. Rambau is the head of business enablement at the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Can you just help us also to understand a little bit about your partnership with the NYDA?
So as the CEO of NYDA was explaining, I think for us it was critical that since we focus predominantly on young people, we needed to find an entity which of course will be a government institution where we can work jointly in trying to bring all critical elements of building capacity through development of young people. As a result, we then engaged with NYDA because they have enough presence on the ground across the country. Actually, they work together with 115 local youth offices, and they have 15 branches across the country of their own. And it was on that basis that we felt if we were to engage with NYDA, we'll be able to reach all young people across the country.
This must have been a most challenging task. One could imagine the amount of efforts and work and the capacity you built in.
And I must actually acknowledge and give thanks to the team at NYDA and NSFAS. Putting this together was a huge task. We actually still recovering from that arrangement where we had to work very hard, throughout different days, day and night, to make sure that the 1st of August was a successful launch.
And a few step backs, remind us, what is NSFAS about and what do you do?
So NSFAS is actually a bursary and loan scheme, and listeners will actually understand that I've actually changed the words from loans and bursaries into bursaries and loan, simply because the amount of loans and bursaries that we give out, you could actually beyond doubt confirm that we are a bursary scheme. So basically what NSFAS is all about is a National Student Financial Aid Scheme, which predominantly focus on helping young people through provision of financial assistance for them to be able to access higher education institutions, be it universities and TVET colleges.
Okay. How is the 2017 different to the 2018 application process?
There is actually a massive difference. In 2017, or the application process to the 2017 academic year, we experienced quite a lot of challenges, particularly throughout the actual application process. We took feedback from young people who experienced the long process of applying through our internet platform, and we took a decision to say we need to improve how we did things. The 2017 application process, as an example, it had 11 pages, the actual application form. We required quite a lot of documents that students or matriculants had to send through to us. As a result, the process took forever. Actually, certain students decided to give up because they were just not getting through. 2018 is completely a different experience. Our application form has now been reduced to only 2 pages. You go into internet online. Within 5 to 10 minutes, you then complete the application.
Give us the application dates. I understand you open on the 1st of August. When do you plan to close?
So we opened on the 1st of August and we plan to close on the 30th of November. And it is important for us to actually pass or send this message to young people. Please apply now, because if you were to wait for the rush towards the end of November, you may be one of those who won't be lucky enough to then get through. So it's important that young people start to apply now.
And who should apply?
So people who should apply, let's start with those who are currently in grade 12, who obviously are looking forward to go into tertiary institution at both universities and TVET colleges that are public owned. We also urge those who are currently at institutions of higher learning who were not successful with their funding application last year to also apply. It is critical to mention that those who we call returning students, or students who are funded this year by NSFAS, they do not need to apply, of course, provided that they meet the minimum requirement of advancing into the next year. We have made a commitment last year that we guaranteed their funding. Actually, we've made a policy change where we're saying if you are funded by NSFAS, we will see you through your academic qualification. So gone are the days where students were expected to reapply every year.
I would like us at a later stage to go back to the currently funded students who don't have to apply, because I could imagine that it should be a very high number. I want us to go back on the line. I'm advised that we do have Patco from Aluwal North who's calling in with a question. Patco, re le dumedisha bila re la mogela.
Dumela ntate wa phela.
Thobela
ntate. Ke go dumedisa lo ntate Vikarama. All right, ntate Vikare be jwa di bima film ya.
Rambao.
All right. Rambao, all right. Ke le bula ho lo ntate ka kgetho. Potso ya ka usually try to bua Xhosa empa ke bua Sotho a bothata. Potso ya pele ne. re na le bothata ne for ntho ya NSFAS especially mo Alwa North Walter Sisulu municipality under Joe Gabi district re na le bothata kuma no a o tlamile bana ba apply a ba tsebo re no di forum ba ka di fumana o kae e ka ba NSFAS ba ka etsa jwang re no di forum tse motho a batla ho apply especially ba etsa grade 12 no since data tsa bu ba tla etsa jwang hore ba fumane di forms hobane ho bimo mo especially Alwa North tax rate le di grade jwalo re fumane di forms ke putsa ka pele putsa ka bedi o na le batho di villaging ya re mhlala tax rate bo mkhesi bo orange a una internet ho bimo o fumane internet in fact a network hence ile ka bona wa khona apply via cell phone o etse ntho tsa hao kaofela e ka ba yeno ntho ba ka etsa jwang hore hape ba tsebe hore no ba ya fitella batho in terms of the road show mhlomo ba ya ditulong tsena and then ba kopana le batho ba tlatsa di form especially batho ba etsa grade 12 and then butsa ka o qetela ke comment actually ke hobaneng ba sa di drop di form especially di radio station di teng mos batho ba di mamela di radio station imhlala takalane ba tsa di form takalane tse ding ba di kuka ba di sa masipala and then fumana hore batho ba tla kgona hore ba be haufi and then re bo di wireless ga bolela hore no ha o batla ho apply with grade 12 di form di teng mona takalane community radio e tloka po ha masipala officing fitlo ba tsenta manzi communication officer and then itla ba bebe o bona hore no batho ba ska sukula e ra o apply o tshwana o kwetsu. Thank
you very much, Patco. I would like us to go back to Mr. Ramukumba, who's on the line, the NYDA CEO. And I think the two questions, Mr. Ramukumba, I'm not sure if you were able to get the question from Patco. He asked about the forms. Where can they get the NSFAS application forms? And also, he asked about the network, considering that most applicants may be coming from rural areas and without connectivity. Can you try to respond to this question, also touching on the role of the NYDA offices?
Thank you very much. I think let me start with the issue of connectivity. All the local youth offices where the application processes will be happening and all full service branches of the NYDA does have internet connectivity. We have prepared for that to make sure that there are no disruptions when young people go there to apply for funding. But over and above that, specifically with regards to the full service branches of the NYDA, all the full service branches of the NYDA have been turned into Wi-Fi hotspots, which means that that will be a backup connectivity plan, and also that will further allow us an opportunity in cases where the number of young people who require assistance at the offices is too high. We can be able to get them to be guided to be able to do the application using their own cell phones, because they will be able to connect to the internet because of the Wi-Fi connectivity that we have provided in all those offices. But briefly looking at the mandate of the NYDA, as I tried to explain earlier when the connection was bad, the institution was formed to replace the National Youth Commission as well as the Umsobombo Youth Fund. Just to briefly reflect, the Youth Commission had the responsibility of lobbying and advocating for youth development across all sectors of society, whilst the Umsobombo Youth Fund had the responsibility of ensuring that young people are incorporated in the mainstream economy of our country, mainly through programs aimed at skills development as well as entrepreneurship by young people. So what has then happened is that the agency, having been a replacement of these two agencies, took over those two mandates from the two institutions, which were combined into one. But over and above that, we were then given the responsibility of ensuring that there is integrated youth development in the country, which means that through facilitation and mainstreaming efforts, we bring together the efforts of both government at all three spheres of government, as well as the efforts of the private sector and civil society organizations to deliver youth development in our country. We do implement youth development programs and projects ourselves directly, but given the limited resources, we have prioritized specific areas which we think that if we intervene decisively on them, we will be able to ensure that the development of young people becomes a little bit easier, and the incorporation both in society and in the economy of the country will become a little bit easier. These focus areas for this particular year, financial year, are skills development as well as entrepreneurship, because the majority of our young people are locked outside of the South African dream of a better life for all because they lack the skills that are required by the economy. So we design programs that are aimed at providing them with skills that will enable them to provide either labor to the economy or to the needs of the economy, or at least enable them to be able to start their own enterprises, which we support, which can then deliver on the requirements and the demands of the future economy of South Africa.
0800-142-446. We are coming to you live from Pretoria. This is the NSFAS, a radio program in collaboration with GCIS. We are talking about the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. The applications for 2017 have been open. Back to NYDA. Mr. Ramukumba, could you please take us through the assistance that is available? I understand that there are young people that have been employed to guide whoever will be working in, and are these trained well enough to be able to deal with the challenges that may come?
They are trained well enough because I think one of the good things that we must be able to appreciate specifically from NSFAS is that the application form previously used to be very long. If I'm not mistaken, it was close to 12 pages or so. Whereas what NSFAS has done this year is to simplify the form. The form is only 4 pages long, which then makes the application process itself a lot more easier. So the officers who will be stationed at all these offices where the application process will be provided have been fully trained to be able to understand the form itself, the process that must be followed. And the guidance that will be provided really is that for those who will be applying online, they will be assisted to make sure that they go through the process correctly and complete it correctly so that their applications can be able to be processed so that they can be able to get their assistance. But over and above the online application process, which our officers are trained to provide guidance on, these officers are further trained to be able to undertake the application process on behalf of applicants. So what you will find when you go to our centers is that there are 2 ways to be assisted. You can be assisted with the actual online application process, or you can complete the form manually. You can complete it at the comfort of your own home. You can just come to the center and drop it off. There will be allocated spaces for drop-off. So you drop your form there, and our officers will then capture that form on your behalf and ensure that you are able to access the opportunity to at least be considered for funding for the 2018 calendar year.
Okay. Mr. Rambau, from the NSFAS side, what are the supporting documents that are required when you apply, both manually and online?
So the good thing is the application process is the same if you are applying manually or online. What we need is your copy of your ID. For those who actually don't stay with their parents, or those who have lost parents, an affidavit to also support that. Those who stay with people who are employed, who may actually be supporting more than one child, or actually they're finding it difficult to send other students to university. Copy of their salary advice. And what is critical, of course, for those who are currently at universities, your academic results, we will be able to receive those. Those who are in grade 12, we will need a copy of your latest academic results. You don't necessarily have to wait until you finish matric. You can give us what you currently have at the moment.
And I understand that during the launch, when the CEO was announcing, he did mention that there is a need for the parents to sign the consent form. Tell us, what is that all about, and why is it important?
It is very important because we want to ensure that we fund the poorest of the poor. When we ask for parents to sign the consent form, is for us to be able to go and fetch information which we can validate to then say the information that we've been presented with, is it actually correct? And if it is correct, then we can then proceed to evaluate the application form. Without a consent form, we are not legally allowed to go and ask for anyone's information. So that's why we need parents to sign the consent form.
And why do you need to go and,
It is important to say this to the public. Our funding is limited based on the amount of money that we receive. So it's very important that when we fund students, we are 100% certain that we funded the correct students. Now, when we get a consent form, we can then send that consent to the credit bureau to then say, can you then tell us if this parent is employed or not? If the parent is employed, how many other accounts do they have? Because if you look at really what we're doing, we're trying to support those who cannot afford. Now, if parents are not planning properly to take kids to university, we will also get an indication to say, is this an issue of poor financial planning on the parent side, or they're actually indebted because of things that they really need. As an example, if a parent is paying for a house, we'll understand that your parent is paying for a house. And if they're taking kids to universities and they've got more than 2 or 3 kids, we'll then be able to get an indication if they can afford to take the third child to university.
Okay. We've got Saul from Limpopo. Tobela.
Tobe.
Hey, bongwak.
Lega compare.
Rawana ralena puchalena.
Ke dirisele ba imba NSFAS ka mo studio ga mo NYDA. Nna be ke nyaka go ne botsisa go ba NSFAS a ke re na mo magae Limpopo Bozebediela re na le bothata ba bo di internet a ke re le gore ke be ke nyaka gore ana go ba a apply ka online jwale bothata go bo di internet ke ya mathoma ke ntle le gore go ntse le ba theletse go Bozebediela community review ba ino gore ba ka le ka sedimoshe jalo le na le leano la gore le tle le etele di province mo eno gore o tla kwala kwatsa ya be gore bana ba tsebe gore go na le road show goba imbizo like mo eno gore ba tlatla ba le bona personally lebile ba khumana thuso e le first hand information na ke yona putšo ka mogolo wa ka.
Tobela ke a tseba re ya mathomo putsišo ba šitše ba yarabile ba NYDA mara eupša le ka itlhalosa ba garang bao ka sepedi ba ikwe gabotse.
Tobela le bolela nnete re a tseba gore around the country go na le mo go na le bothata ba internet. Rona as batho ba NSFAS together with NYDA re na le plan ya re tla ba le di road shows across the country. Di road shows tse re ba le jona go tla ba le van e tla ba sepelang le rena van e tla ba ina le connectivity ya Wi-Fi. Reason ya re sepele le van e go re he re fitla mo community ya lena re tla thusa di students ka di application form gore he re sepele re tseba gore di form tsa bana ka villaging ka moka di feletse.
Nke le re tlhalosetseng fa ka mathata a ileng gore as the National Student Financial Aid Scheme you have experience in the previous year with regard to returning students that were applying earlier. I said to you, I want us to come back and talk about these 2017 students that are funded by NSFAS that do not have to apply.
So one of the critical issues that we need to advise students on is, if you are a NSFAS funded student, we have what we call a loan agreement form for those who are at universities, and we've got a schedule of particulars for those who are at TVET colleges. Until such time that a student signs this document for us to have them on our records, meaning in our database we have this documents completed by the student, technically you are not funded by NSFAS, which means when we search you in the system, it will still say you were provisionally funded, but because you have not signed these documents, you are not fully funded, which then means when you apply or you do not apply for 2018, there's no guarantee that your funding will be there in 2018. So it's important that students must complete these documents. One of the key challenges that we experienced in coming into 2017 academic year was that most of the 2016 applications or applicants signed manually through different universities and TVET colleges. It took us a bit of time to upload those into the system so that we can then actually have a record to say we have funded this student in 2017, therefore you should not reapply in 2016, and therefore you should not reapply in 2017. So it is critical for all NSFAS funded students to sign this document so that we can have it on record that you are funded. If you do that, then you do not have to reapply. But if you don't complete this process, as far as we're concerned, you are not funded.
How is NSFAS going to deal with one of the challenges that you had in 2017 with regard to confirmation and proving that the students have applied? I would like you to touch on that, because it was a big issue at the beginning of the year. Kuli, welcome back. Kuli, are you back on the line?
I'm back on the line, Professor. Thank you so much.
Yes, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you. So I was saying I had a friend of mine, sister, who was funded by NSFAS. And they paid for her studies up until a certain time. But then up until she finished her studies, there was a time that apparently NSFAS didn't pay. So that happened that she couldn't get her diploma. When she was graduating, she was told that a certain amount is still outstanding, and her mother had to pay for her to get her diploma. Now, how can NSFAS ensure that they are secured?
Okay, I think we did get Kuli's point, and it's a very important question that she's raising. Let's start by explaining it in this way. NSFAS only started to take the application process away from universities and TVET colleges in 2017, which means records that were kept by universities from 2016 going back, if we do not have that record in our system, it will be difficult for us to then say the student is funded. Now, the problem that Kuli raised, where she said the friend of her sister was funded up to a certain time, it talks back to some of the key strategic issues that we had to deal with, where students were expected to reapply every year, which means if you were funded in 2013, there was no guarantee that in 2014 you will be funded, and similarly 2015 and 2016. As a result, we then decided to take a strategic decision to say we're funding our students for the duration of their studies, which means if you continue to meet the minimum requirements, which is that of passing 50% of the subjects that you are enrolled, we will continue to fund you. But it is critical to re-emphasize this point that if a student does not sign a loan agreement form or a schedule of particulars, as far as NSFAS is concerned, that student is not funded. So currently the working hours, of course, it's from 8 to 5 Monday to Friday. But since our intention as an entity is to respond to the needs of our clientele, which is students, if we do see that there is a necessity for us to then maybe extend working hours, more so that during the week most of the students are at school, we may then need to consider extending our operating hours through to Saturdays.
Okay, and back to the question of the tracing the application and making sure that the application was received, is all in order?
One of the key messages that when applicants visit our stations that we're putting forward is to say, if you can't prove it, it means we don't have it. What that simply means is when you complete your application online, you will get a reference number. Immediately when you push send, you will receive a reference number. That reference number is what you will use continuously with us if you have queries as we proceed with the process of evaluating your application throughout to the funding stage. Similarly, for those who will take manually completed forms, when you drop your form at what we call the drop zones, which is your local youth offices, you'll be given a reference number. There will be a card which looks like a small business card, where a record of the reference number that is on your form will be the same reference number that you will leave with on the card. It is important to also advise listeners that NSFAS does not sell its forms, which means you must be given that form for free. Our forms are not in black and white, they are color forms, which therefore means do not retake or accept a copied form, because we will simply not be able to help you on that basis.
Okay. Mr. Ramakumba, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Tell us about this partnership. Would it not put a strain in terms of what the work of NYDA is doing now that you'll be carrying more the NSFAS work?
Not really. We have done a proper assessment of the additional work that will come with the responsibilities of facilitating the application processes for the 2018 calendar year insofar as applications for NSFAS assistance is concerned. And what we have done in collaboration with NSFAS is to recruit at least about 115 previously unemployed graduates to support this particular program. So in the NLD branches, as and when young people visit these branches to be assisted with the application process, in each branch they will find 2 dedicated officers whose responsibility is only to deal with the NSFAS application process, so that the other daily programming of the NYDA is not necessarily disrupted by this responsibility that we have taken on in order to ensure that all young people in all corners of our country are able to be provided with the opportunity and access to be able to be funded through NSFAS.
Okay. Before I let you go, Mr. Katu, you did mention that there is a connectivity at your centers. They can apply online and they can do this and that. Will they be able to print? Will they be able to scan? Because those are the most important things, especially that a consent form has been mentioned that parents must sign. Does your centers have those facilities?
Yes, all the centers are fully equipped with the facilities which will enable that if a young person brings a copy of ID and affidavit and so forth, those are able to be uploaded and be sent directly to the application center where the actual application process will happen. So all the centers are fully equipped, and of course we will be doing a monitoring process which will ensure that should there be glitches in the process, such are identified timeously and they are attended to timeously to make sure that young people do not get frustrated when they get to the centers and they need assistance with the application process.
Okay. I would like you to tell us how to get hold of your centers. If I'm in Pretoria and I want to know where your centers are, how can I go about that? And before you do that, let's take one caller from Hammanskraal, Moretti. Good evening and welcome. Moretti, good evening and welcome. Re gona ra lena.
Thabela.
Le bua le Moretti Mosala mo Hammanskraal. Ne ke kopa ho botsisa papa hore like ke a qualify ho apply for NSFAS if ile hore sa le ka study le another institution, and then ebe le hore institution e ene ke study le yona a ke khone ho seletsa khoso ya ka due to tšhelete ke sena tšhelete ho tsebisa khoso ya ka go pele, and then ebe hore ba ntshwara di results, so ebe ke patela di results ke serefela only the academic record, and then when time goes by ebe ke utlwa ba re khoso ene ke yetsa a isa le teng mo systeming ya sekolo, so ne ke study le tsona. So ne ke khona ho botsa hore wa kgonahala hore nka apply for another course and then ebe ke apply for NSFAS na
ka ngwaga o mofeng o e be le studisha ka ona?
Ke thomile studisha ho tloha ka 2011, and then with ka 2014 ka ile hore batho ba neng holo they were responsible for my funding, they become deceased, and then ebe le hore a ke khone tswela pele ka di-studies, and then ka this year early January ebe le hore kona ke ya go ne ke study ya go teng ke inquire for information on what happened. Ban tlhalosetsa hore that course I was doing even it's no longer le ya go sekolong here. Ke be le ke ba le fela le an incomplete academic record, the modules tse di ngatang ka di tshelelletsa ditšhelete.
Okay.
Okay, maybe before you go, were you funded by NSFAS before or you were not funded?
I was not funded because I did apply for NSFAS and then azanga cry to me azanga cry le meke I was meke patella ke pension na se le ngore meke dula le cho so e le hore dia tlhokofala and then ha tlhokofala ka kwela school and then ka ipatella ka tšhelete le tse ka patela ka tšhelete e leng gore ka le ka kry-a mmereko nyana and then ka patela pele ke itse gore o ka kgona le gore ke apply and then ke etse course e nngwe na.
Yes, wa kgona le apply and you can do another course. But maybe just on the side to maybe advise you, the current academic results that you have, it's important that when you apply for another course, you apply for something similar to what you were doing so that you can be credited some of the coursework that you've already passed. As NSFAS, our policy, it's simple. If you want to go to a public-owned university or TVET college, then we are happy to then receive your application and process it and see if we can then fund you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, le ka tswela pele ma. Okay, ra le bogama. Gomme a re boele morago go Mr. Katu, who's still on the line. Katu, I've asked earlier that how accessible are your offices? Where can we find those offices to know exactly where they are?
All our offices, specifically the local youth offices, are established in partnership with local municipalities. So the offices are easily accessible in that, in the majority, they are found in municipal offices where people frequent for other services that government offers. So they are across all municipalities across the country. Of course, as we have indicated, the 100 that we've selected are those that are fully functional, where young people, when they go there to apply for the NSFAS process, they will be able to find someone who will assist them with the process. But to get a list of all of these 100 offices that we're speaking about, I would like to direct all the listeners to the NYDA website, which is www.nyda.gov.za. We have listed all these local youth offices, so they are able to, if they go to the website, be able to see which site is the nearest to where they reside. Alternatively, those who don't have access to the internet, who can be able to go to the website, they can call this toll-free number of the NYDA, which is 0800 525252. That number, they will be able to get in touch with one of our call center agents, and if they indicate the area in which they reside, they will be able to be provided with information about the nearest office that is close to them, where they can be able to go and get assistance with the application process.
If you can repeat that number again.
It's 0800 525252.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramokumba. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for hearing us.
Okay. On the line now, we're joined by Mkwevu from Eastern Cape. Good evening and thank you good evening and thank you for joining us.
Okay, Budi.
Hey, Ninjan.
Kona boka kona na oraji.
Account. Hello, can you go on with your question?
Okay, no, I question am comment ikala ne.
Yeah.
Una umkhakha NYDA angathi bani tula fast. Une corruption eningi and le nto uzayidestabilize because imishini yabo abayenzayo ngoku bafuna ukusapota i-SASCO. Nazinto yakwenzeka ngoku.
But your comment now is political. I think what we are discussing this evening is how NYDA has partnered with NSFAS.
Comment lapho angadibani uNSFAS NYDA. uNSFAS makathathe ofisi yakhe azisevasithi because bayipolitika bona ngokumenza kwenzeka. uNSFAS makadibani NYDA akathathe ofisi yakhe uNSFAS azise straight i-varsity. Ityama zino-apply sathe solo lidibile ofisini NSFAS elapha i-varsity ukuze NYDA bayipoliticize ke ngoku lapho ngokuzawukhatha abantu ke ngoku uzaya ngekhasi phayana because bona into abayenzayo ngoku bafuna unyusa uSASCO into abayenzayo leyo ngoku.
Okay. No, thank you very much for your comment. Okay, I'll let Mr. Rambau to respond to that. Mr. Rambau, the concern here is that this partnership is not good because it's party political. In summary, but before you respond, there's Stembiso from TUT who's joining us. Stembiso, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Your question, we have very few minutes left. If you could just be brief.
No, my question is very much straightforward. We have graduates or people who have students who have finished studying but they still have outstanding fees. What I want to ask you to say, how can NSFAS assist for them to have access to their diplomas or degrees? Because they are still having outstanding fees to the institution. They can't have their degrees and diplomas. So by that, they cannot even be able to job hands.
Okay. Stembi, so are you talking about students that are still studying, they are continuing postgrad, or they've left, but their diplomas are withheld by the institution?
Yes, I'm speaking about postgrad, their diplomas are withheld by the institution.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thanks.
Mr. Rambau?
So maybe let's deal Stembiso's question. A year ago, we actually asked universities to give us information of all students who were owing institutions, and we then had a structure that we called historic debt. Universities made their submissions, and we actually, off of the money that we asked from the government, we had to redirect part of it back into the mainstream of funding other students, simply because the numbers that universities had given us were actually not the actual demand that we had there. So my advice to Stembiso, and I suppose other colleagues that he is studying with, is to go and engage with the university. The university will know what process to follow. And once we receive the university submission, we will deliberate on how best we can resolve this issue. But it's also critical to also make this emphasis that that is something that we will need to resolve together with the Department of Higher Education. It's not going to be a quick solution. We won't receive the list of students, then all of a sudden everyone will be given their diplomas or degrees.
Okay, maybe let's just, because time is not on our side, let's just go back to closing date, supporting documents, who should apply in brief, and contact numbers where they can get hold of NSFAS if they can't get any assistance from the NYDA.
So people who should apply are those who we call first come entrance into our system, those who have never been funded by NSFAS. Either you're doing your matric this year or you've passed, you're currently at university and you still require financial assistance. The supporting documents are not a lot. Your copy of your ID, those who are already studying at university will be able to access the academic results, and those who have passed matric but could not go through to university will need you to submit a copy of your grade 12 certificates. And of course, if you need to give us an affidavit to support your case, either because you don't have people who are supporting you, either your parents have passed on, you must do that. And those who have members of the family who are actually employed, that consent form is very important, and they will need a copy of your salary advice.
Okay.
The opening date, 1st of August.
Before you go on, there's just one caller that let me squeeze. Stirman, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Hey, thank you very much. What's your question?
Okay, then the color non buzaba ko putne. I that person ngakana i7 apply ile ngoku ne. Was in the apply last year. Yophendulwa inoba ngoFebruary isikolo sesona ke sinivalele because akhange ndibe na registration fee. Sikuza sikhatha xa singakanani ukuthi ngiphenduleke. Okwesibini ko lo mphulaphuli bekwangena ne. Nami ndafuna ukuthi office zika NSFAS. How about the sesikolweni? Immediately uthatha sesikolo. Ibe kanti ukisupporting document ezasuka ngokuthi iza 664 uyaqualify na as NSFAS. Unga-apply ngathi isikolo wafumana but i-funding ibingekho. How about immediately uthatha sesikolo uNSFAS akhale kakufande if every document uzaziproduce esikolweni. Inkosi.
And Kosebo, I think the question there is about response. How long does it take to get a response from NSFAS? He had the same problem this year. And also, do you have partnership with basic education? Can you consider utilizing the schools as one of the points of distributing the application forms?
Okay, let's start with the one regarding the answer. So the final outcome of what we call the funding decision will only happen in January for grade 12 students. For those who are currently at university, where we can access the academic results in December, we will be able to give them the final funding decision. So members of the public would recall that the NSFAS system is not based on first come, first serve. We accumulate all the application forms from the 1st of August to the 30th of November. Beyond that, then we start doing what we call the ranking process to see who's the most deserving student, and then we go down all the way to the least deserving student. The second comment around, can we not then maybe look at different options on how we can make NSFAS accessible to members of the public? We continuously take ideas on how best we can improve the way we do things, hence the change that this year we've implemented. And we'll continue to do so. If members of the public find it easy to get things through your secondary schools or even your admin's centers, we willing to look at that as options going forward.
Okay. Victor Rambau is the head of business enablement at the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Thank you very much for joining us. Just wrap up with that number for NSFAS that they must call, or if there is any email address or social media.
The number to call if you need us to assist you, it's 086 0067 327. 086 0067 327.
Okay, and then that number for the National Youth Development Agency is 0800 5252 52. And thank you very much. That's it. We have come to the end of our program, my NSFAS radio program, brought to you by the National Student Financial Aid Scheme and Government Communications, GCIS. My name is Kahisho Mamabolo. Until next time.